is India at 9, broadcasting live from the CNN-IBN headquarters in New Delhi.
Good evening. You're with India at 9 this Monday evening. Yes, it's the start of a brand new week. All the day's top stories and the big debates coming for you in the next 90 minutes. I'm Anubha Bhosle, attempting to fill in some really large shoes. But before that, let's do a quick check of our big stories. 4 bodies recovered, 21 still missing after engineering students from Telangana are swept away by water released by a dam in Himachal Pradesh. Students who witnessed this horror claim no warning sirens were sounded when the water was released. The big story from the neighborhood, 28 are dead after terrorists raid the Karachi International Airport. The Tehreek-e-Taliban calls it revenge for the killing of Hakimullah Mahsood. India sounds an alert across all airports. And yes, that Karachi siege is going to be a big talking point tonight as Pakistan paid a heavy price for failing to rein in terror groups. That's going to come in at 9:10 p.m. Let's track the other headlines. President Pranab Mukherjee outlines the Modi government's roadmap for reviving the economy, will push FDI in sectors that generate employment and provide an investment-friendly tax regime. This is another bad news. The monsoon is weak. The Met Department is warning there could be almost a 30% deficit in rains this time. And it's been yet another day of 47-degree heat and power cuts for the national capital. Prime Minister Modi meets the Chinese foreign minister with the visiting envoy. Defense stapled visas, claims they don't affect either country's stand on Arunachal Pradesh. Also adds that the current border mechanisms can ensure peace. A special CBI court sentences all 17 policemen to life in prison in the 5-year-old Dehradun fake encounter case. They were convicted of killing a young MBA student. Is this a change? The Home Ministry has approved the use of helicopters in offensive operations against Maoists in Chhattisgarh. Sources are now telling CNN-IBN so far they were used only in rescue missions. And a vibrant Gujarat-style investor summit at a national level. Well, dates are yet to be finalized for what could be called the Vibrant India Global Investor Summit. Yes, first on India at 9, that tragedy at Mandi, a man-made tragedy. There's simply no other way to describe this tragic loss. Engineering students from Telangana who were on a holiday trip washed away by water released from a dam on the river Beas near Manali. So far, 4 bodies have been recovered. 21, including 1 tour guide, are still missing. The students who escaped claim that sirens or hooters were not sounded to announce the release of water from the dam. The authorities are in fact denying the claim. For the time being, an FIR has been lodged and the entire staff of the Larchi Dam has been suspended. The victims were from the VNR College of Engineering in Hyderabad. The Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh has ordered a probe. Before we get in a ground check of where rescue operations stand currently, let's really look at how this tragedy, in a sense, happened. As we've been pointing, really the one tourist spot that many can identify with is Manali. But this is really the river Beas flowing all the way down. The Larchi Dam and the Pando Dam, which is downstream, are the 2 points that we need to look at. Remember, it was about 6:20, 6:25 Sunday evening. There was extra water that was released from the Larchi Dam. Now, here comes some conflicting signals that we have got, both from authorities as well as eyewitness accounts. At about 6:30 or so, 48 students, 1 teacher and 1 tour guide were at the village called Thalaut. They were really on a holiday, on a camping trip of sorts. They were clicking pictures. Some of the eyewitnesses who witnessed that entire horror unfold and managed to escape are pointing to the fact that there were no hooters, there were no signs, there were no warning signals of any kind. About 20 to 25 odd students actually got caught in this surge. Remember, when the Larji Dam actually released water, such would be the force, such would be the surge, that students in a sense would simply get swept away. These were 24 students who got washed away. The rest, of course, managed to swim to the bank. They alerted officials at the Larji Dam. Remember, the first sign of warnings, in a sense, should have come from the officials of this hydroelectric power project. And it really isn't just the sound of a hooter or the sound of a siren. There has to be other communication mechanisms that also need to be placed so that people who are downstream, really here in the Pando Dam, there could be downstream industries, there could also be villages, really need to be communicated this fact that water is going to be released. Remember, it's just a matter of seconds. The force is such that 24 students got washed away. Sunday about 6:35 or so, the floodgates, in a sense, were then closed. Locals tried to protest on the road. They caused a traffic jam of sorts near the Thalaut village, really making the point that they heard no hooters, they heard no sirens, there were no warning signals, so to speak. Rescue teams almost took about 4 hours to reach this particular accident site, and as of this morning, when rescue operations really began in full daylight, 6 a.m. Monday, 12 hours later, in a sense, the first body was taken out near the Pando Dam, and later on many more bodies were recovered. But for the families, for the loved ones, for the friends of those engineering students, it really has been an anxious 12 to 24 hours with news almost trickling in.
A desperate cry of a mother for her missing son. Widowed Satyavani's only support, Ashish Mahanta, left home on the 1st of June with a promise to return home within 10 days. But little did Satyavani know her son's holiday trip would turn tragic.
The persons whomsoever are accompanying with him, and they are safe. They given the information, he rescued 2 girls and he is drawn away. Till now, we doesn't have any information.
Rescue operations are still on. The fate of at least 20 students is not known. The students allege that it took 4 hours for rescue operations to start, delayed due to protests by local villagers.
पुलिस तो ऐसे ग्रुप्स में इकट्ठा थी, लेकिन कोई जवान ऐसे नहीं दिख रहा था कि कोई स्ट्रगल कर रहा है.
They were very close to the shore and still.
Chief Minister Veerbhadra Singh, paying a visit to the site, had to face the eye of angry students questioning the delay in rescue operations. The state government had few answers but has ordered an inquiry. HRD Minister Smriti Irani also assured support.
I have expressed my concern to the local administration with regards to intermediate checkposts which should be available.
Order inquiry by Divisional Commissioner in this matter. All aspects of the matter will be taken into account. If there is any negligence found on any part, on anybody's part, suitable action will be taken.
For now, Satyavani along with parents of the missing students have left for Himachal with just one hope of reuniting with her missing son. With Jyoti Kamal in Kullu and Preeti Singh in Hyderabad, in New Delhi, Reena Bhardwaj.
Okay, let's get an update from our correspondent Jyoti Kamal, who's joining us live from Mandi for more on this story. Jyoti, obviously at this hour of the night, rescue operations would have wound down, but would it be fair to say that in a sense, hopes of finding any survivors are almost close to nil?
Well, yes, you can say that. In fact, that's the kind of signal that's being given out by the authorities here, that the hopes are almost nil now. In fact, the resident engineer of the dam, which actually released the water on his orders, said that so much water was released after he ordered the dam gates open that nobody could have survived that surge of water. So he himself acknowledging that the chances of anyone surviving are absolutely bleak. But we are here in Mandi. This is a grief-stricken town. All shops were closed here today. There was a candlelit march also taken out by the residents here. People do keep falling into the river. Trucks fall into the Beas River. Several deaths do take place here. But this is a tragedy that has hit everyone in the stomach here. 24 students, 24 young students who had gone gone down to the riverbed just to get themselves photographed, have a good time there as tourists, and the surge of water comes and sweeps them all away. In fact, there were tales of heroism also there as several boys rushed into the water to save their comrades, to save their friends. Right. The friends were saved, and those who had tried to save them were also washed away. So tales of heroism here, tales of grief, and of course the families of the missing students have now started trickling into Mandi town. Now they'll be at Pandore Dam in the morning. Rescue operations have been called off for the night. They will start again in the morning, and they're not likely to end for the next 4 to 5 days. So the stories are going to continue, but the families are going to be there tomorrow at the Pandore Dam waiting for news. But it's no longer a rescue operation. Sure. It's now a retrieval operation. Retrieval operation. I think we need to make that correction. It's only protocol, but grief in a sense doesn't notice any protocol. Jyoti, all through the day you've really been reporting on the conflicting signals that have come in from the spot. Students, those who witnessed the horror, seem to be suggesting that there were no signs, there were no sirens, there were no hooters. But I spoke to the DGP of Himachal Pradesh just a short while ago, and he's suggesting to me that the preliminary inquiry is indicating that yes, the hooters were sounded, but he does agree to the fact that perhaps the noise around the river, the voice of the river, the fury of the river would be so much that the hooters may have not been heard by all. Are there any other signs of warning, of communication that the authorities let out before they release the water? No, there were no other signs. In fact, that's what's being now pointed out, that while the hooters were sounded, that's what the dam authorities are banking on, that we sounded the hooters. So they are saying that since we sounded the hooters, we did our job. But the question is, the job was not done, because the students who had come there, they were not local residents. They did not understand what the hooter meant. It was just a hooter. They did not understand that this hooter means that there's going to be a surge of water. In fact, there were villagers also shouting out to the students to clear the way, but they could not understand what they were trying to say, because they had never been in such an experience before. Sure. They had not known that such a surge of water could come. And when the surge of water came, it came so fast that they could not react. It was lapping around their feet, the water, and within seconds it was right 5 to 6 feet above the boulders because of the surge that came, and they got washed away in that flood. So now the question is, what else could have been done? Could the water have been released in a pulsed manner? Could it have been gradually released and increased so that the students would know that the water level is going up and they could clear the area? True. They just didn't have time. And that's the question, that they just didn't have time to save themselves. Jyoti, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much for that exhaustive, in-depth report coming in from the spot of this Mandi tragedy. And ahead on India at 9, we'll be returning to this top story and focusing on how this is a tragedy that could most definitely be averted. Plus, many of you are sending in your own experiences from some of the states where dams and hydroelectric power projects are many in number. Yes, but this certainly is the big story here on India at 9. The Pakistan Taliban has claimed responsibility for an hours-long attack at the Karachi International Airport, one of the country's busiest and largest airport, which witnessed a bloody and a protracted siege. These were highly trained, well-armed militants who may have been planning to hijack a plane, disguised in official uniforms with official ID cards. At the end of that bloody day, 28 people, including 10 terrorists, were dead in Pakistan.
A 5 to 6 hour siege at Karachi's Jinnah International Airport, starting at 11 p.m. Sunday night. Heavily armed gunmen, who we now know were with the Tehreek-e-Taliban, attacked the Karachi airport in 2 groups, focused on the terminal used for the Hajj pilgrimage, and another section close to an old terminal. Disguised in official uniforms and with some of them carrying official IDs, they were armed with rocket-propelled grenades and rocket launchers. At least 3 of them detonated their suicide vests. By Monday morning, the death toll stood at 28, including 10 terrorists. 4 airport employees and 9 security personnel were among those killed.
स्टेट फायर किया मेरे ऊपर, मैंने जवाब में इसको स्ट्रेचर ही मार दिया, मेरे हाथ में स्ट्रेचर था, बस स्ट्रेचर मारा है, पीछे से पुलिस वालों ने इस पे फायर मारा है.
On Monday morning, the Tehreek-e-Taliban took responsibility and called it retaliation for the killing of Hakimullah Mahsood, killed in a US drone strike late last year, as well as military strikes near the Afghan border, and suggested its plan was to hijack a passenger aircraft. The peace talks between the government and Taliban fell apart earlier this year.
It reflects poor intelligence. It reflects the overall security situation in Pakistan, which isn't improving. And it shows that the jihadis are a greater menace than the Pakistani state is willing to accept. One of the consequences of the attack on the Karachi International Airport could be further restriction of or further reduction of international air carriers flying into Pakistan. That will only lead to Pakistan's greater isolation.
The group has vowed more attacks. The highly trained militants had backpacks stuffed with food and ammunition and may have been expecting a longer siege. Coming just a few years after a brazen attack by militants on the Mehran naval base in the same city, many questions now arise for the Pakistani government over what seems to be a major intelligence lapse. With Amrita Tripathi in New Delhi, Deepika Kaura.
Okay, so that's our big talking point on India at 9 tonight. Has Pakistan paid a heavy price for failing to rein in terror groups? Let me introduce our guests who are joining us on our first talking point on India at 9 this evening. Ambassador K.C. Singh, former diplomat. Also joining me, Lieutenant General retired Raj Qadian. He's of course been the former Deputy Chief of Army Staff. Amit Barua, the Hindu's resident editor in Mumbai, joining us from that city. And Wajahad S. Khan, senior journalist, joining us via Skype from Islamabad. Good evening, gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining us here on India at 9. Ambassador K.C. Singh, if I can first start with you. There are two incidents that took place on Sunday. We, of course, know of this bloody Karachi siege for which the Pakistan Taliban has claimed responsibility, but the other in which 23 Pakistan citizens, pilgrims, who were actually returning from Iran from a pilgrimage, were killed in Taftan. My question to you is, do you believe it would be prudent to say that both, in a sense, perhaps are interrelated, actually as a part of the Pakistan Taliban's terror campaign because of all the operations that have been happening in North Waziristan?
No, they are related in a very broad sense, that radical Islam and different groups, because the groups that have been going after the Shias in Pakistan would be different, Lashkar-e-Jangvi and so on and so forth.
True.
But they share many of the ideologies. Some of the, maybe even the troops are common between them who are working for them, but otherwise their motivations are different. What we are seeing in Karachi is essentially something which is a fallout from the split in the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan split into two groups, which was seen as a great success on the part of ISI, Pakistan government, because they managed to wean away the Masood tribesmen, which was about half the strength of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, what is called the Sajna group. So what was left behind was the leader of the group, who is the leader of the group, and with him he's basically got the non-Masood elements. He is from the Swat Valley. Fazlullah is from the Swat Valley, and he heads the residual or the main TTP. Now from this division, this thing has come up because Fazlullah has to now show that his group is relevant. His group is able to hit, whereas the other group had been weaned away because that was closer to the Haqqani group, closer to the Afghan Taliban, closer to now the ISI and the Pakistani elements and the Punjabi groups which target India. So you have a division in that.
Absolutely, and I think, in fact, that's the very statement that has come in from Pakistan Taliban. Amit Barua, what stands out, in fact, about this siege is that despite all those divisions in the Pakistan Taliban, as Ambassador K.C. Singh has pointed out, this particular group has been able or has shown that it has the ability to launch these big high-ticket attacks, these spectacular attacks in a sense, capturing the international age. After all, this is one of the busiest and the largest airports in Pakistan where such a coordinated and a well-thought-out strike has been managed.
Well, absolutely, Anubha. I think the fact that the airport was attacked, it comes at a time when the new civilian government is trying to restore the economy, or at least is talking about that. And such a high-profile strike at the Karachi airport, which is the busiest airport in Pakistan, the commercial capital of the country, it sends a signal yet again to the rest of the world that Pakistan is not safe and that these kinds of attacks might just happen. Already the image about Pakistan as a country where violence, terrorist violence, extremist violence, the hold of these extremist groups is there for all to see. So this just comes and it shows exactly what you're saying, that the lethal striking power of the Taliban, whatever you call them, these groups, is evident. And I think there's very little doubt in my mind that Pakistan really faces an existential choice. The talk of negotiating, what we've seen over the past few weeks, I think the Taliban have shattered that myth once and for all. I don't believe that you can really negotiate with such groups. You have to take them on. But at the same time, I think the political conditions to take these groups on are absolutely essential. And politically, we see many of the political parties in Pakistan have moved closer to the Taliban in terms of their ideological approach. So in a real sense, what is happening is that the country has been driven to despair, and ordinary people who want to live a normal life just like anywhere else today find themselves victims of these terrorists, of these militant elements. And it is in a sense really up to the government and to the military that their time has come to take a call. I mean, over the years, many a time where major attacks have happened, we've seen this, whether the naval base was hit or the army headquarters was hit, or a big school was hit, police training school was hit near Lahore. So we've had many of these high profile incidents. But when you hit an airport with, the kinds of scenes that we've seen, since
and the
this
ramifications.
morning, I mean, the signal is very clear.
Lieutenant General Qadian, the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's office in a statement actually indicated that terrorists, in a sense, had a plan to bring down our aviation industry.
First of all, any terrorist attack anywhere in the world leads to loss of innocent lives, and it's condemnable. Our hearts go out to all the people who have suffered, their families. The world today recognizes Pakistan as the foremost country which is supporting terrorism. They are using terrorists to further their strategic aims, both in Afghanistan and in India through Kashmir. Now, when you nurture these terrorists, a stage will come when they will turn against you. I mean, if you are trying to light a fire to burn a neighbor's house, you have to be prepared to get some of the flames. That is unfortunately what is happening in Pakistan today. The Tehreek-e-Taliban, whose main philosophy is to act against the government, Pakistani government, there are more than 20 formations of these terrorists, Haqqanis, Al-Qaeda, LET, etc., etc. But Pakistan has been using these, they nurtured, they are providing them funds, they provided them training, they provided them arms and ammunition. They nurtured them to further their own aims. Now they are paying the price. That's the sentence you used in the beginning. I fully support that.
True.
And this is going to hurt them. Even Nawaz Sharif's government, they took help during the election from one of the Taliban factions. So when you nurture them, when you give them all the support,
so you are paying the price.
A stage will come when you have to pay the price for it.
So you are paying the price for not trying to rein in terror groups.
Yes,
before I get in a view from Islamabad and take in Wajahat, Ambassador Casey Singh, I mean, would it be fair to say today that the Pakistan state is not willing to realize that jihadis are a bigger menace than they had ever expected?
Well, yes and no, but I think this is a little more complicated. Because as I said, after creating the division in the Taliban, the group that remained behind was going to hit back, but they've actually created a division in that group. Now that may have other repercussions in Afghanistan later.
True.
But from their point of view, they have halved their strength and they're dealing with only one half. So they've cut the Masouds away, and there were also strikes, they had aerial strikes in the North Waziristan area just about 2-3 days ago. Now, this kind of aerial strike will not work. I think after dividing it, they'll have to now go after the rest. They cannot go on with aerial strikes and by cloak and dagger methods, weaning away people from them, because that will not work. They can only buy temporary peace, then the residual group will hit them back. They have to go out and get them.
Just for a moment, gentlemen, I just want to focus on the narrative that actually percolated through social media even as the operation was on or soon after the attack. And Wajahat, come in here on this one. I want to focus on the reaction that perhaps came in from many elements in Pakistan, including the likes of the LET, the tweets that came in from the Jamaat-ud-Dawa account, spreading what is an enormous amount of misinformation.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I first of all want to stress that all the arguments made so far are brilliant and on their own are very strong. But the situation on the ground is such, it seems, I must say, I'm afraid, that things are so nuanced and so fluid and so dynamic that I could pick holes in everybody's arguments as well, but that's not the point. I think the idea is to construct a larger narrative together, just for the purposes of the largely Indian audience which is watching this. This is what's going on in Pakistan. I'm not going to bore you with the details inside baseball about which group has been weaned away, and everybody knows about the famous case of blowback which this Islamic Republic has been facing for the last decade now of supporting proxy groups, which eventually evolved into terror groups. But the bottom line is the following, that the cases like this one, the ones which happened last night, are slowly indicating, but surely indicating, that there's a U-turn, there's a slow U-turn happening in the larger Pakistani narrative about how to deal with these bad guys. A lot of people still aren't convinced, as you pointed out, Anurava, that these are bad guys. A lot of people had the typical knee-jerk reaction that Indian elements are involved. But I'll tell you what, a lot of people were very honest and very introspective and very tough on themselves. I'm talking about civilian leaders, military leaders, and of course journalists and opinion makers across the country who are seeing the light, who do know that incidents like this one, brazen attacks which humiliate the country and isolate it further, like this one, need to be, well, eventually dealt with. Now, just to give you a broad analogy, this is what's up. A lot of institutions in Pakistan, including the military, the civilian institutions, journalism, etc., everybody was in one direction when it came to largely tolerating the proxy groups. All of a sudden, 9/11 happened. And all of a sudden, the one institution fast trained to take those U-turns, took a partial U-turn. That was the Pakistani military. Everybody else was slow to take the U-turn. A lot of people are still in the process of taking the U-turn and turning their back. Finally, personally, professionally, ethnically, morally, taking the U-turn on these guys. But it seems that the different elements in Pakistan haven't been able to convince each other or convince themselves about the real threat, which is terror. However, just to give you again the big picture, 2 years ago, a similar attack down the street at a naval base ended up in destroying or dismantling more than half of this country's naval aviation fleet.
Right.
All right? That was bad. This was relatively much better. It was done and over with in a few hours. They were prepared for it, relatively better prepared for it. They knew what was coming their way because they'd been down there before.
Vajad, you painted that big picture, but nevertheless, it doesn't take away from the fact that there was a major intelligence lapse. Ambassador K.C. Singh, if I can bring you on the question that I was trying to ask Vajad, the fact is, even as this attack was underway, or the operations to finish this attack was underway, there was a huge amount of discourse that was playing out, perhaps on social media, about Indian-made arms, about the presence of perhaps Indian-made arms being left, or bulletproof jackets, etc., being left. Do you believe that there are many elements from within Pakistan, including the likes of the LET, the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, etc., who would now use this as an opportunity?
Well, they will attempt to use it, but I'm sure people in Pakistan are smart, journalists are alert. They'll have to be, simply because there is some weapon which surfaces. Firstly, we have no evidence that there was any weapon which had any link to India. Secondly, even if they were there, we know that weapons are seized in Kashmir Valley by militants in the past. Sometimes at the border, at the line of control itself, that has happened. So it's possible there may be odd weapons floating around from the past. But considering the new government in India has just taken over, something like this had to be planned well in advance. It would have been planned sometime around the end of May, which is when the split in the Taliban took place. It would take them 2-3 weeks to do it. And in any case, Karachi has Taliban present there, and both the groups would be there. So they would have done the recce, etc. So for a new government which has just taken over in India, it was just unimaginable that anybody would get involved in a thing like this, either the previous government, which was on its way out, or the new government, which wasn't even settled. So who's going to even theoretically believe something like this? So therefore, this is something where Pakistan government, I'm sure, will come out with the proof, will show what the links are of these people. There were some reports that some of them look like Uzbeks or Central Asian. It's possible because...
Can I jump in here?
That's true. Wajahat, I'll just come to you. I'll just come to you in a bit. Amit Barua, if I can bring you in, because both Ambassador Singh pointed to alert journalists, etc. But Wajahat, I know, was here on India at 9 a couple of nights ago, debating with us the GeoTV suspension. You know, the fact is that there is a kind of clampdown in Pakistan. There are attempts to curb free speech. There are attempts, in a sense, to circumscribe this space that is available for free speech. And it can really have a larger impact in a situation as critical and as crucial as this one.
Well, Anubha, I must tell you that, you know, having lived and worked as the Hindus correspondent in Pakistan, I must tell you that Pakistani journalists are very brave. They work under very adverse conditions, and they are in a position, and they have displayed in the past, that they are one of the pillars of Pakistani civil society. So I think journalism in Pakistan is very difficult to practice, but many of these practitioners have done the profession proud. Having said that, you know, what has happened with Geo and what is happening to the media, I think it's symptomatic of the kind of power, especially television, has got in Pakistan today. I mean, the fact that the ISI was locked in a conflict with GeoTV shows in itself the power of Geo and the power of television. So the larger point that I'm trying to make here is that civil society institutions, democratic institutions have been strengthened to a large degree in Pakistan. And today, the institutions that held total sway are being questioned. Questions are being asked about their role and their importance in Pakistan. But I think the larger point is that in the civil society and all that we've seen, and we talk about, you know, this group and that group, I think the larger issue is that the Pakistani state, whether it's the military or the civilian government, needs to understand the seriousness of the situation. And this is a question which has been posed to it time and again, that it is a very serious issue for them. The need to take on these groups, the need to neutralize them. The fact that you can hit the Karachi airport with such impunity, the kind of signal that it sends out to the rest of the world is only this, that it's not safe to come to Pakistan, it's not safe to visit. These are the real signals that it sends out. So my real issue, my real concern is that we have seen in the past that the political establishment, be it of any political party, has not been in tune, has not been able to take on these forces along with the military, whether we like it or not. The military is the force which is required to take these forces on. So this U-turn which Wajahat was talking about, maybe the U-turn will still happen amongst other sections, but really I think time is running out, and the fact that Pakistanis want to live just like citizens of any other country, I think really the issue is that how long will they have to await the state to wake up and take them in that direction?
Let me take that U-turn back to Wajahat, who in fact made that point. Wajahat, answer this question. I think the big picture that comes out of today's attack is, like Amit's pointing out, the signals that it is sending out. How is Pakistan actually tackling terror? What is Pakistan's clear objective? Because there would be many who say that there is a kind of a vacillation that's happening. There is a vacillation that's happening between fighting terror and a vacillation that's happening about making peace with Taliban, or this is the Taliban that we can talk to?
That's an excellent question, in fact a pivotal question, and you must understand that even despite landmark moments like Benazir Bhutto being taken away from us because of terror, despite moments like that one, this country is not come on the same page. This country's major institutions have failed to come on the same page regarding fighting terror. That's how divided the internal narrative is. But just so you know how institutions are changing and what Pakistan is doing, the latest thing, as was pointed out by the ambassador earlier, he was spot on with it, is to break these guys up via talks. So engage them, and whoever wants to talk, well, we will talk shop with him. Whoever doesn't want to talk, well, bang, bang, goodbye. Assassinations on the ground, airstrikes from the air, working with the Americans and ISAF NATO forces across the border for those guys who cross over, working with the Afghans. That's not working out very well, of course, but it's a broader effort. Now, what's really happened in the last few days is critical. Everybody needs to understand it. That just yesterday, the Pakistani state, including the military, gave a 15-day heads up to the people of North Waziristan to either expel those elements which want to go on fighting, those terrorists who do not want to talk and or face the consequences. It's a strange deadline to give to your own people.
True.
But again, the people are mixed up in all of this partially. Not all of them, of course. Some of them are just poor farmers and peasants, but there is local protection. Peace agreements on the ground, it has been reminded to the locals of North Waziristan that need to be honored. To the typical urban Indian, this wouldn't make sense. Peace agreements of the Pakistani state and the military with its own people, yes, but those are the strange rules. Those are the old colonial era rules which have stuck on and gone on to haunt this poor country. So that's a different debate. But bottom line is, what we're talking about, that U-turn is critical. Some elements in this country are already committed to it.
You know, I'll take the nugget of that back to Ambassador KC Singh, who talked about that split in the Pakistan Taliban in the first place. But the fact, Ambassador KC Singh, is that while there may be some who may be calling it a U-turn that can be used by the Pakistan state, the fact is the Pakistan state and the military really haven't been on the same page on anything. So I'm taking that question that I put to Wajahat, really. How is Pakistan fighting terror?
I agree with you, and that split itself may not be just to counter the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, though that is the primary motive, because the split group works closely with the Haqqani group and the Afghan Taliban. So it may be part of also a design for greater intervention in Afghanistan after the US withdrawal. So as the army does a tactical thing to deal with Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, they are planning to use the elements they have weaned away, not to bring them into the mainstream of Pakistani life, but to use them for their political ends in Afghanistan. No, this is not a lesson learned. This is simply a tactical rearrangement where you get the bear off your back, but you are using also for a future operation. Then this cycle will go on, because there will be retaliation from the Afghan side, from others who get affected. So you may douse the fires temporarily, but you'll create a greater conflagration for yourself.
You know, Amit Barua, just to put a counter to that in a sense, because critics have actually pointed out many times that this actually allows these militants to regroup and re-strength, and then you have an attack of the kind that you've had today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that, you know, obviously the Pakistani state feels, and this is a difficult area. I mean, you know, North Waziristan and other places are not easy to launch big operations, send in people, all those things are there. But at the end of the day, we have to look at the record. Are people safer there? And is the rest of the region safer on account of what is happening in Pakistan? And the answer must be no. So I think really the issue is, the willingness to take on terror must be demonstrated. And I think whatever the name you give to these groups, because at the end of the day, what is happening is that the signals that are going out loud and clear to everyone is that this is a state which is afraid to confront militants, which is afraid to confront terrorists. And I think that, I'm afraid, in today's day and age, these kinds of signals can be really serious and have major consequences for any country that is unwilling to do so.
I think that's at the bottom line of it. How does General Qadian, Pakistan, give these signals that it is willing to rein in terror? So far, nothing really has given confidence, whether it's trying to break the Pakistan Taliban, whether it's trying to engage in talks with one section of the Pakistan Taliban. Clearly, nothing is working. So how does Pakistan actually demonstrate the fact that it wants to do this?
To the public that suffers in these kind of attacks, it makes no difference which faction of the Taliban is involved in it. The problem lies in the duplicity in the policy that Pakistan is following. They are trying to control these militant groups internally, but they are also trying to use them externally, both in Afghanistan and in India. Unless they follow one uniform policy, I mean, the Rangers have done a good job. They killed all the 10 militants in Karachi. They perhaps prevented a hijack, which may have been one of the aims. But the effective defense against these attacks lies not in reactive response, but in preventing such attacks.
True.
That can only happen when they have a very strong intelligence network. This problem is not only peculiar to Pakistan. India should also be prepared. that attack in Herat could be just a warning shot.
It
came immediately after the election when the swearing-in took place and Mr. Nawaz Sharif accepted the... I think both countries have to be ready. If Pakistan sincerely means to control this kind of militancy internally, they also have to stop supporting them externally and using them for their strategic gains, both in Afghanistan because the NATO forces are moving out, and also in India, which they have never stopped since 1989. So I think Pakistan needs to make up its mind what policy it wants to follow.
Needs to make up its mind what policy it wants to follow. Gentlemen, I'll just do a final round as we wrap up this debate here on India at 9. Ambassador KC Singh, do you believe that this particular attack really impacts relations with India in any way? Do you believe it's given a handle to some elements in Pakistan to talk about some right-wing groups here in India, or is that of no consequence?
I don't think so. I don't think anyone in Pakistan would take this kind of a charge seriously, that India had a hand in it.
Sure.
That's about the only thing which could have affected. If some Indian weapons, etc., were with these people, maybe an attempt was made by some of these groups which are under pressure. This always happens when the Pakistani military starts taking action on the western frontier against these groups. They try creating a situation where the Indian military draws the attention of the Pakistani military. So you create tension with India, but that's not going to work because Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has just been here and the evidence is very tenuous, is just notional. No one's going to believe it. The transition is just, so I don't think it's going to affect anything. But really it is, it's decision time for Pakistan. Clock is running. They have to act fast.
Amit Barua, the clock is running, says Ambassador KC Singh. I know Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif had recently, I think, told the BBC that he was still hopeful that a peace initiative with the Taliban could succeed. Do you believe after today's attack he would be still as hopeful?
Well, I think that, you know, the whole issue of dialogue was something with a big question mark. I think attacks like this really, you know, make the question mark bigger, is that what is the purpose of the peace talks? I think the effort was, as Wajahat was saying, the effort was probably to wean away guys or break them away and make sure that those who want to talk or those who want to return to the mainstream, you know, they could come back.
True.
But obviously that's not a policy that seems to be working because the army, the Pakistan army on its own has been sending out signals that it's not happy with this peace process and there has been engagement with militants and terrorists in different places. So this is a signal which parallelly the army has been sending out. I'm afraid we don't know much about the mind of you know, the new army chief here in India as to what his approach is to these entire question. But really, I think that the larger issue is that each time such big attacks happen, the world takes notice. But at the same time, what happened to the Shia pilgrims in Balochistan, all these issues, all this really tells you a story of a country which is in deep crisis, which is at odds with itself in terms of deciding what its future should be. Like, does it want to join the rest of the region and the rest of the world in giving its citizens a better life, or is it interested in a very narrow understanding of religion and ensuring that narrow understanding of religion becomes the structure of governance? So I think really the political class in Pakistan needs to take a call as to what kind of I mean, if we talk about democracy, about strengthening democracy, then I think that the hardline notions of Islam that some people are trying to foist on Pakistan should be rejected. I think these are all very critical issues for Pakistan to grapple with. And really, I think if they do make this U-turn, I think they will find that there's a lot of support for them and there will be a lot of help forthcoming in trying to change the trajectory of Pakistan, in trying to build a different future for the country.
Wajahat, I'm going to give you the final word here. Do you think that U-turn really is possible? And I'm coming back to the media question for lots of reasons. I mean, I don't mean to trivialize it, but less than 12 hours, I think, after the operation or after the attacks in Taftan, and this operation was undergoing, Dawn News about 11:30 a.m. broadcast was about lemon butter fish. Pakistan TV was putting out a US skiing operation, I think, on its telecast. Again, I'm underlining the fact that there is nothing that takes away from the brave Pakistani journalists, but this really is an atmosphere of clampdown. Do you believe, as Amit Barua and Ambassador KC Singh has said, that that U-turn really is possible?
I think the crux of that decision will have to be figured out by the new civilian leadership. This military has ceded a lot of ground, believe it or not. A military which used to run proxy wars without checking in with the civilian government, a military which used to develop nuclear weapons without checking in with planet Earth, struggled recently to shut down a Mayor TV station. That's how much ground this military has ceded. That's how much things in Pakistan have changed. That's the big picture on this military's commitment. And just so you know, I feel that Amit has nailed it on the head. This new government, which has a lot of responsibilities, needs to move and seize the moment and take this. They're not doing it for whatever many reasons. It's complicated. The Saudi alliance, the innate conservatism of the Sharifs. The bottom line, though, is that this military doesn't feel that it's ready to go ahead and say, all right, we're declaring war. This new civilian leadership, newly empowered civilian leadership must seize the moment. And I'm wondering what's holding them back. And I keep on going back to that internal division in Pakistan, that internal conviction about how bad the bad guys really are. As for the media, lemon butter fish might be fun and games, Anuradha, but I can guarantee you that a lot of us risked our lives to report last night, and we'll keep on doing it.
And that's one of the reasons I prefixed that. And that's one of the reasons I prefixed that question. I'll have to end it here, gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining us here on India at 9. We've been debating the question, has Pakistan really acted in an effective, in a cohesive manner? Has it really been able to rein in terror groups? Well, opinion really on the same lines, but the military establishment, the Pakistan state, perhaps all our panelists agreeing to the fact, needs to seize the moment. We'll take a quick break here on India at 9. When we come back, we'll do a quick wrap of the big national stories that have been developing. Remember, there have been 2 more arrests in the Pune suspected hate crime where an IT professional was killed. And these are the first high-profile talks that have taken place between India and the United States after that Devyani Khobragade episode. The U.S. State Assistant Secretary has held talks with MEA officials.
This is India at 9, broadcasting live from the CNN IBN headquarters in New Delhi.
Welcome back here with India at 9, and we're returning to our top story, that tragedy in Mandi, the drowning where 4 students have died and 21 others are still missing. This is a tragedy avoidable by all sense. Let's first look at the protocols that need to be in place as far as hydroelectric dam authorities are concerned. Now, these are the mechanisms, in a sense, that could have prevented this tragic loss of life. A siren is supposed to sound out 3 times before water is released, warning villages near the riverbed to get out of the way, warning anyone who could be near the riverbed to get out of the way. Did this really happen? Well, there are conflicting signs about this particular part. Villagers of that Thalot village are alleging that authorities at the Lardi Hydel project did not sound the hooter, whereas authorities seem to be suggesting that they did indeed. The big question also that arises from this man-made tragedy, most definitely avoidable, is that did authorities follow all protocol and communicate all the necessary warning either to the administration downstream or to industries that could have been downstream or to officials who could have been downstream? Were there enough signs, gates to identify some of the hazard areas that can be near the dam? Remember, authorities really have been pointing to the fact that there were hooters, but when the rush of the water comes, really no hooter perhaps could be effective. And finally, just perhaps not the right time to pose this question, but were students and teachers well versed with safety rules to be observed near dams? Possibly no, because my colleague Jyoti Kamal, who's been reporting all through the day from the ground, has been indicating that villagers did try to point to these children that move away from the riverbed. The water levels are slowly rising, but the children obviously not in the know as to what had happened. Here's Jyoti Kamal's ground report.
The difference between the Larji Dam and the Pandor Dam and the Beas River that's flowing in between is a 15-kilometer long stretch. You can see that several boats which are there now to be looking for bodies have also been deployed. A lot of them are volunteers who are now going through this entire stretch. You can see that the flow of water is very intense. If you look towards the left side, you can see that it's almost like whitewater rafting here. So the students had got down into the water. They had wanted their photographs to be clicked. They had not anticipated that there's going to be a sudden surge in the level of the water, which happened because the Larji Dam suddenly released a lot of water into the Beas River, which was already flowing very fast. And the sudden increase in water caused all the students who were there towards the center of the river to tumble into the river. And because of the very rocky terrain that you can see all around and in the riverbed also, they started tumbling and rolling through the rocks, which in itself battered them. The bone-chilling waters that are there, they also numbed them. And of course, now the search and rescue teams are trying to retrieve the bodies. Several bodies have been retrieved. There are teams that have been deployed along the way. Deputy commissioners of adjoining districts are also here overseeing the operations. With us is the Deputy Commissioner of Kullu, Mr. Rakesh Kanwar. Sir, what happened in this particular case?
As you can look here, many people traveling to Manali, they stop by the riverside and they get down near the river to click pictures and sit in water, which is risky as such. It should not be a routine thing, but people go down and they think that it's safe to be there, but it's not very safe. So so these students were also there at that time. Unfortunately, the water level rose because water from dam was released, though the dam people are saying that it was with the prior warning and they have followed all the protocol. But that will be clear only after a proper inquiry.
All the staff of the Larji hydropower station have been suspended. The resident engineer, he has also been suspended. We are going to ask him really what happened. Did you sound adequate warnings when you released the water?
It has been confirmed and checked by the staff of the available at the dam site at that time on the duty. It has been confirmed by them that they have sounded the hooters before releasing the water into the Beas River.
Here is a villager who says that there were no warnings sounded. आपको कोई warning सुनाई दी थी?
नहीं सर, नहीं सुनाई दी.
So here is a villager who says no warnings were sounded. So it's a little contradictory, but the resident engineer there saying that all warnings were sounded. They could not hold the water. They were under compulsion to release the water. So it was a very delicate balance that they had to strike, and unfortunately the students who did not hear the warnings, they got washed away in this flow. Several teams now deployed. Bodies have been recovered. More bodies are being searched for now along this entire 15-kilometer stretch, which is a very fast-flowing Beas River. With Neeraj Upadhyay at the Larji Dam, Jyoti Kamal.
Yes, and that brings us to our second talking point on India at 9 tonight. The Mandi tragedy could have been avoided. Was this a tragedy that could have been averted? Joining me in the studio is Himanshu Thakkar. He's the coordinator of South Asian Network on Dams, Rivers and People. Himanshu, thanks very much for joining us here tonight. And SS Guleria, he's the DIG of the NDRF. He's in charge of the Mandi operations. But before I come to you two gentlemen, I did manage to speak to the DGP of Himachal Pradesh, Sandeep Kumar, just a short while ago, and I obviously asked him about the latest in rescue operations. Remember, at that point in time, there was still light enough, but the chances of finding any survivors was obviously receding.
Yesterday evening at about 6:30 p.m., some of the students got down to have photography, etc. in the Beas River near Thalot between Mandi and Kullu. They ventured into the water and were taking photographs, etc. when the flow of water was not that turbulent. Moments later, the incident took place when water was released from Larji project. The excess water caused the turbulence and the flow increased. The strength was so much that about 25 of them are feared washed away. Rescue operations is going on in full swing since yesterday.
I also put that question to the DGP about the conflicting signals that Jyoti was reporting about from the ground. That eyewitness reports have seemed to indicate that they heard no sound, they heard no hooters, they heard no sirens, but the Hydel Power Project authorities seem to suggest that they did follow proper protocol.
Since an FIR has been registered, detailed investigation will be carried out. In the meantime, Honorable Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh visited the site along with senior officers and senior ministers, and one of the senior ministers is coordinating the government's rescue operations. There, an inquiry has also been ordered by the Honorable Chief Minister into the incident. I think all these things will be looked into in detail. So far, preliminary report is available. Even if the hooter was sounded, as it has been confirmed that hooter was sounded, but then it might not have been audible to the students who were there in the water because of the flow of water, and they may be talking among themselves, etc.
Okay, so the only two parts of the interview that we managed to receive so far, but SS Guleria, let me take this to you. What the DGP told me, that there is possibly a likelihood that the Hydel Power Project authorities did follow protocol, those hooters were there. But obviously, the fury of the river and the sound of the river would be that students may not know what has happened or may have not heard it. Is that roughly the inputs that you've got from the ground as well?
Yeah, ma'am, that can be the possibility that there may be siren or students may have heard it or not. In fact, it is a matter of investigation, and I do not have the ground realities, the information, and it is beyond my competency also to comment on this.
True.
I would like to concentrate or I can tell you only about the disaster response or the response of our team which has taken place so far.
Okay, sir, so let me just focus on that. Obviously, it's more than 24 hours past since that tragedy has taken place, and we do believe 4 to 5 bodies have been recovered. Tragic as it is to ask this question to you, and for any families who may be hearing this interaction, would chances of finding survivors, I'm presuming, would be receding now or close to nil?
Unfortunately, the chances of survivals are very, very low, very least, or we must say that by now, if there would have been any survival, we would have certainly found out, because on both banks of the river, the intensive patrolling has been carried out since yesterday and since morning also, and the rescue operation or the patrolling in the water also has been carried out. So chances of survivals are very, very less. I must say it's negligible.
Sir, the loved ones and the family members of these students have been pointing perhaps to the lack of information. There are some concerns that the gates hadn't been closed downstream. In many cases like these, the bodies actually go far, far down, and the chances of recovering those bodies also becomes more difficult.
Yes, the chances of retrieval of the bodies are difficult, but as far as the bodies are concerned, most probably we are of the opinion that the bodies will be found between the place of incident and the Pandor Dam, which is a stretch of about 18 to 19 kilometers. And since morning, the area where there is a Pandor Dam, from there we have already blocked that area, so the chances of the dead bodies going further below are negligible. There is no scope, so the area of operation will remain the same where we have carried out the operation today only. But here, our past experience, my past experience shows that many times, the dead body get beneath in the water, and especially here in this case, there are big boulders, there are big rocks, and there are chances that bodies have gone under the boulders and must be entangled somewhere. And we are finding it difficult, especially our deep diver, because of the turbulent flow, the rocks and the boulders, and especially, the murky water, there is a mud also. So these are the factors as a result of which we are not able to retrieve the dead bodies. But many times, it takes time, and after 1 or 2 days, bodies comes up. But till that time, we are trying our best to carry out this search operation.
Obviously, it's not quite the news that anyone would like to hear. Mr. Guleria, if you can just wait for a bit, I just want to throw in some questions to Himanshu. Himanshu, as you look at this tragedy unfold, and many of the villagers actually pointing to the fact that they saw no communication, they saw no hooters, they saw no sirens. But what is the one big learning that we must take from a tragedy of this nature?
See, every dam is creates a potential risk zone in the downstream area.
True.
We have had experience of several such incidents. This is not the first gruesome incident.
Absolutely.
It has happened in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, all over India.
True.
And in none of those incidents, the responsible officers have been held accountable.
Right.
In a case of Madhya Pradesh, where 60 people were washed away,
That's right.
the NHDC official said we had written a letter and posted it that we are going to release water, and the Tehsildar said we never got the letter, so neither of them were punished. Nobody was punished. So that's the first thing. Secondly, every dam needs to have a transparent, accountable operation rules.
True.
How is it going to be operated? Now, even if the hooter was sounded, how will the students know that what is this hooter going to signify? Were there signboards on the road every 50 meters?
So
how far the hooter sound goes?
So what is the protocol for any hydroelectric power project, or perhaps this size? Does there have to be effective communication? Does there have to be signages? Does there have to be booms? What is the...
In fact, the trouble is we don't have credible procedure for dams. And that's what, so you know, it's not just the question of half a hooter.
That's true.
The impact of the releases would be up to the Pandau Dam, which is 18 kilometers.
That's right.
So all over that stretch, there should be warnings available. Secondly, it is not just the hooter, but you know, signboards should be there in local languages and so on. Thirdly, when a wrong operation, in this case what has happened clearly is that the dam has released water, not the powerhouse.
That's right. The hydroelectric power, the dam authorities, the leader
the dam release, not the hydropower.
Right.
The hydropower outlet is 3.5 kilometers downstream.
Right.
And in a lean season, when the power demand is high, in such a situation, how come the power operation was not happening, the power component was not operating, and the dam was releasing water? So there are so many unanswered questions, and the inquiry of the DC will not be credible. What will be required is an independent inquiry, which will really go into all these questions and also hold accountable the inadequate safety measures. You know, we don't have. So, you know, we have sanctioning of the Ministry of, we have been raising this issue with the Ministry of Environment about the impact of operation of the dam. And that assessment should be part of the environmental impact assessment, and management plan for such a eventuality should be part of the management plan. Similarly, Central Water Commission, Central Electricity Authority, Ministry of Power, there is a dam safety bill in the parliament.
Absolutely. Himanshu, you know, I want to bring that point because there's one of the viewers who wrote in to say that in Chamba there are 4 big dams, but there's not even one alarm system in any of the dams that exist.
Exactly. In fact, most dams, even the basic alarm systems don't work. And what the local people, we should be more believable than the dam engineer anyway. So, they are not only not working, there are several places where people have been killed, but the dam operators don't get punished. And so the dam engineers know that they are not going to be punished irrespective of what happens due to their wrong operations. So this, and the dam safety bill which is in the parliament has nothing about the wrong operation of the dam. It only talks about the structural safety of the dam.
Okay, so there is no onus as far as the operational requirement of those who would be running the dam is
Exactly,
concerned.
and we have no law about this. In India, there is no law about the operational safety and the impact of operational non-safety of the dams in the downstream area.
Fair enough. Himanshu, I'll have to end it there, but I'll just give the final word to Mr. Guleria and bring the focus back to this particular tragedy. Mr. Guleria, many of the family members have pointed to the fact that there is very little information coming in, and I think there is a realization of the tough task that you have in carrying out this retrieval, relief, rescue operation. What would you like to say to them tonight?
I would like to say that have faith in us. We are trying our job. Tomorrow early in the morning again we'll start operation. Even during night patrolling on both sides of the river is going on. And we can make our efforts, and rest it is up to God, you know. We are supposed to do the efforts that we are doing.
Fair enough. Gentlemen, on that rather somber note, I'll have to thank you here for joining us on our second talking point tonight. Clearly, as Himanshu has pointed out, this has been a tragedy that could have been avoided, not just today, but before as well. We'll take a quick break. There's a wrap of the big national and international stories coming up ahead. Next on India at 9, yes, it's been another scorching day here in Delhi. 47 degrees heat and power cuts for the national capital. We'll have our special report coming up ahead. let's do a quick roundup of the big stories of the day. President Pranab Mukherjee today addressed a joint sitting of Parliament outlining the vision map of the Modi government, calling it the first clear mandate for a political party in 30 years. The president saying that putting economy back on track was this government's top focus. In the almost hour-long speech, the president said containing food inflation is going to be top priority, also saying contingency plans are in place for a weak monsoon. The government is also prepared for the same, also adding that FDI will be allowed in sectors where it will generate jobs. The big push will be on reigniting investment and restoring business confidence. The government also promising a non-adversarial and investment-friendly tax regime. Also in the list of promises that came in through this vision statement, the statement of intent is a single window system of clearances for manufacturing infrastructure development program for high-speed trains, roads and airports. Also adding that clear rules will be formulated for allocation of coal, minerals and spectrum.
My government will follow a policy of encouraging investments, including through FDI, which will be allowed in sectors that help create jobs and assets. My government will create a policy environment which is predictable, transparent and fair. It will embark on rationalization and simplification of the tax regime to make it non-adversarial and conducive to investment. My government will function on the mantra of minimum government, maximum governance. My government is dedicated to the poor. Containing food inflation will be the topmost priority for my government. My government will take effective steps to prevent hoarding and black marketing.
Sir, your first reaction on that presidential speech, how do you rate it?
No, I don't know. They have not given any ground to rate anyway, because ultimately it is highly rhetoric, high in tone but low in content. There is no reference to the recent communal violence which has taken place. There is, for example, Pune, the technical professional, innocent fellow, was killed, and what happened in Gurgaon. These are all the concerns, immediate concerns. They have not been addressed by the president at all.
Okay, now to our special report here on India at 9. The heat wave continuing unabated in North India. The national capital for a second day saw temperatures above 47 degrees. Delhi is, of course, also reeling under power cuts, often lasting for many, many hours. The administration now saying it will take about another 20 days to completely normalize power supply. Sahil has more.
For 70-year-old Veer Pal Singh, this summer has been one of the worst that he has seen. While Delhi saw temperatures soaring to a 6 decades high, the power supply has been erratic at its best. Outages are now taking a toll on this Dwarka resident.
सांस लेने में दिक्कत हो जाती है, पंखा नहीं चला पाते, गर्मी बढ़ जाती है एकदम, और इनहेलर वगैरह भी नहीं ले पाते क्योंकि सांस नहीं होती, तो सांस को रोक के कहीं इनहेलर ले.
The national capital has seen up to 6-hour-long power cuts this summer. Why? 10 major high-tension transmission towers of 220 kV damaged due to the May 30th storm. 3 key transmission lines hit. At least 20 days before the system reaches its old strength. The demand is high due to rising temperature, but transmission already overburdened due to the 3 damaged lines. West and Northwest Delhi worst hit.
हमारे पावर तो है, उसको सप्लाई करने की प्रॉब्लम है.
कब तक ये सब कुछ नॉर्मल सुधार में आ जाएगा? कब तक?
भाई हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे थे. अभी परसों रात को एक लाइन गाजीपुर, नोएडा और गाजीपुर आती है, वो लाइन खराब हो गई है.
Add to that, the city's hunger for power has broken all records. Total power consumed on 5th of June has been the highest ever for Delhi. Worst hit are these residents of West Delhi who are spending sleepless nights waiting for power to come back.
The nights is very, very difficult to spend because then you can't sleep when power is not there. so we have to go out, spend time outside.
5-6 घंटे लाइट नहीं होती, उसकी वजह से मोटर नहीं चलती, पानी का बहुत दिक्कत होता है, हम पैसे खर्च करके बाहर से पानी मंगवाते हैं.
In this sweltering heat, there is no respite for Delhiites even at homes. With officials making it clear that the situation is unlikely to improve in the coming days, the question that Delhiites are asking is, do they not deserve better? With Shubhajit Sen Gupta in New Delhi, this is Sahil Murli Meghani.
More national news. A special CBI court has awarded life sentence to 17 police officers who were convicted of shooting a 22-year-old MBA student in Dehradun in cold blood. All 17 have also been asked to pay a fine of 20,000 rupees. This is a week after a 24-year-old IT professional was killed in a suspected hate crime in Pune. 2 more people have been arrested in connection with that murder. The police is claiming they're all members of the Hindu Rashtra Sena. The group's chief, Dhananjay Desai, has been sent to 14 days of judicial custody. He has not applied for bail just as yet. This was the big diplomatic handshake after a meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has said that China welcomes any specific plan from India to settle the boundary dispute and will work with New Delhi to find a solution. The envoy also defending the staple, the visa issue though, saying it did not affect the stance of both countries when it came to Arunachal Pradesh. More visitors. US Assistant Secretary of State Nisha Biswal met with her counterpart at the Ministry of External Affairs today. She also met Information and Broadcasting Minister Prakash Javadekar. Biswal arrived in India on Saturday on a 3-day visit, and that visit coming months ahead of Prime Minister Modi's visit to the United States, where he will be meeting President Barack Obama. The Home Ministry has agreed to the use of helicopters to deploy forces to fight Maoists. Sources are telling CNN-IBN that Home Minister Rajnath Singh has informed the Chhattisgarh Chief Minister Raman Singh of that in-principle approval. The Chief Minister had sought more helicopters, but the issue also needed to be discussed with the armed forces. Well, government sources are indicating to CNN-IBN that the Modi government is planning to follow the Gujarat model of Investor Summit at a national level. Narendra Modi has reportedly initiated discussions for a vibrant India Global Investor Summit. The dates are yet to be finalized, but sources adding that the summit could be held in the first week of November to coincide with the annual India show of the World Economic Forum. Okay, that's all we could pack in here on India at 9. But we're leaving you with a somber thought. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families and loved ones of those engineering students who were caught in the furious waters of the Beas. Good night. Goodbye.